Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reasonably Effective Podcast. I'm 10 Types, as I was joined by Uncommon Fossil.
Hello, and very much glad to be here today.
Yep, and today we are talking about, of course, the Pokemon TCG, but we're talking about something a little bit different. We're not talking about standard. I mean, I guess we'll probably touch on it, I suppose. But if you're not familiar, standard is the main way to play the Pokemon TCG, which is the last like 2 to 3 years of the Pokemon TCG. Those cards are the only cards legal and regular rules for every card, 60 card decks, um, all that good stuff. But today we're talking about other formats because Standard is by far the most popular one, and even if it's not everyone's personal favorite, for the most part, it's like it's by far the most popular. It's what cards are designed for. But today we're talking about some other formats and seeing what else is very good.
Yeah, I mean, standard is well. First, standard is in the name, right? So, but also it's
Yeah.
the only really, I think, the only format internationally with actual official events. I don't know if like the pre-releases counts. Actually, that's a format too, I guess. But
Yeah.
so really, it's the only one being played, and it is the most common format for a lot of reasons. So therefore, it's kind of the standard that everything's judged against, but not necessarily the most fun. It is good. I don't not here to criticize that, but we're going to consider what other formats there are, and probably take into account both the potential to play them both IRL and online as well.
Yeah, I think, and I think standard it is very fun. It is like the Pokemon TCG, but it can get a little stale. So I think when we're looking at these other formats, we're kind of looking at what they do that standard doesn't. Because if there's a format very similar to standard, it could be very fun, but ultimately it's not going to offer a very unique experience. And so that's kind of what we're looking for here, among other different things. But what do you want to talk about for the first year?
I mean, right. Standard is just what we're judging things compared to. I guess the other, let's talk about expanded at least a little bit because that's kind of the next one. There have been in the past expanded tournaments internationally. There still are some in Japan we get some results for. And obviously, there are non official events of different formats. And expanded probably is the most common one, like in stores and stuff. I don't know.
Is it?
Uh, well, you think it, I'm not sure. I,
I think
uh,
it's GLC. I mean, I've never Um, I've heard of some like local GLC tournaments, and like people who play. I can't really think of the last time I've heard someone actually say they play expanded physically. Again, outside of Japan. In Japan, expanded is played a bunch. We don't live in Japan, or we aren't like in communication with people in Japan like regularly or anything like that. But in terms of like results, you can see relatively regular results from expanded tournaments in Japan, and there are some major ones, but there's a lot of smaller ones. And as far as I'm aware, it's by far the second most popular format there. But internationally, yeah, I can't really think of really hearing about it, except for in Pokemon TCG Live, which is a little different. But I'd say it's the same format, but you could argue that.
yeah, it is slightly different, and also besides Pokemon TCG Live, there's Pokemon TCG Online, which will come into play. I think with discussion some certainly pre 2020 expanded was the biggest format. First GLCA didn't exist back then, I don't believe. And
Yeah.
there were actually official, internationally official, I believe, expanded tournaments on an occasional basis, which then made people more interested in it too. But both GLC now exists and they stopped running expanded tournaments, so both those things definitely do hurt the popularity of expanded for sure.
Yeah, and in terms of what the format actually is, it's also I don't know, kind of similar to standard. The
Yes.
rules are here that it's cards from black and white on Pokemon TCG Live. It's Sun and Moon on, and then yeah, I mean everything else is like the same as standard. I think. Um, yeah, the decks are obviously going to be better and a little different. I'd say there's a lot more control or like pseudo control decks, specifically in full expanded. Pseudo control is by far like super good. Pseudo control, as in having serious control elements like the Reggie Draco V Star, the best deck in the format. You have substantial energy, or you have like energy removal. You have um, item lock, like more consistent item lock. Really nasty spread, other types of lock. There's just a lot of things you can do to your opponent that really slow them down. This is true for essentially every deck in the format. If you look at, I'm scrolling through most of it's Fitchy Draco,
Yeah.
Lugia, you got. some similar ideas. You have like ability lock here, with like stadiums. You have your Iron Thorns, which I think more or less speaks for itself there. Paired with other disruptive cards, you have Miraidon, but Miraidon can turn one item lock. You also have, again, I'm just scrolling through here. Um,
Well, you have Vileplume, right? Which is
oh
one of
yeah, you have
the
Vileplume.
decks, which is a big one. But yeah, I mean, so control's a big aspect of full expanded, right? I think we need to consider live expanded a little bit as well, separately, probably as related. First, though, let me just say it is the most similar format to standard. I think I think you said something along those lines, and I think that as
Mhm.
well, because the number of copies of cards is the same as expanded, so therefore it's less different, which potentially makes it less interesting. What one of the issues which expanded has with its ban list and also the way kind of the things get warped around it, control aspects is the cards when they're designed are designed relative for standard format. Really, they're not really designed for these other formats. So therefore, things can get warped sometimes in some unhealthy ways. And because there's occasional control cards, but not a lot, you have control. I think in standard to some extent, but once you get, but the card pool is limited, so it's only a limited control. Once you have the bigger card pool, you can choose from all these old control cards as well. Control gets really good, which I think potentially I think probably makes the game less exciting. I mean, for me, so the quality, the strength of control is a negative and full expanded to me.
Yeah, more like, like pseudo control. Most of these
Yeah,
decks, outside of Vileplume, which you did say, which is a more or less true control deck, um, the other decks are like kind of mix and match
yeah,
some control elements. So there's, I assume, some really interesting strategy at times. Maybe I don't know. As I said, I haven't really played in a while. There are also, in addition to that, there are some decks that are just super fast. So the decks are, I guess, they're all like kind of really fast in terms of getting their main game plan out. If
yeah.
it's controlled, the game plan is slowing the game down, but they get to that point really quickly. And then you have these like turbo decks, and so the power level, as we're saying, is a lot higher. In terms of being very similar to standard, it is of like the more substantial forms we're going to talk about, but there are like what I describe as standard variants, which are like single prize standard, singleton standard, twin battles, like, these forms we see in Pokemon TCG Live, and people sometimes play these, and then they're fine. Um, Ultimately, they're very similar to standard. They're like a lot more similar to standard. They're actually subsets. I think all of those are subsets to standard, but um,
Ye-
yeah, and it definitely has a different feel than standard to some extent, but um, it's. I mean, there's a reason why it was like put next to standard for a while. It also gives a home to some older cards, which can be cool.
yeah.
If you have these cards lying around, but to be honest, most of them are pretty bad. Specifically the Pokemon are, they're for the most part pretty bad, unless they are these powerful support cards, which are fine. But there's not that much reason to play older. I mean, there's some reason, but if you're looking to play like say Mewtwo EX, which is good, you can't really do that. You're not going to have a very good time doing that.
That's true. I mean, what it lets you do, which is one of the reasons I think people can like it, is it lets you play your favorite cards, right? Because you have some cards you like, they rotate out. It gives you a chance to play it again. But a lot of the times they're not good. Like I like playing Mad Party, which wasn't a top 10 deck. It was kind of a fringe top 10 deck, maybe at times. It definitely was a top 10 deck at times. But in expanded, you're going to get like obliterated with it for the most part. It's tough to make it into a viable deck with other strong expanded decks. In live expanded, which we'll talk about some, that is a very weird meta. So almost anything is usable, but it's nice to be able to play like the Den AGX and expanded stuff, which was a good standard card. It's still a really strong card. So some of these things are good. Things are very strong. Obviously, you have more ace specs to choose from. Cards like Battle Compressor helps some. Versus Seeker, an insanely powerful card. So if you like having something such as Versus Seeker, which lets you put a support from the discard pile into your hand, gives you great access to cards. Yeah, that's the nice thing. You want to play something strong and fast and sets up. It's good, but on the other hand, it's a super powerful decks largely. That in some ways to me makes it a little less interesting. And when I look at like say the most recent Japanese tournament here, what is it? 13, I think, of the top 16 decks are all Regidrago. That's not such a great sign either, in my to me.
Yeah, I think that's I was to say a little more of an outlier with Regigiacomo being super good. As far as I'm aware, that's like still the format that it's in, or the state of the format. Specifically regarding Mad Party, though, I will say Mad Party is like one of the least resilient decks like ever. It's like all your Pokemon super low HP,
Yes.
all special energy, um, potentially all basics. Kind of depends. In terms of attacking options. So like if your opponent plays like because I played in expanded and we both played in expanded Pokemon TCG online,
Yeah.
which was before Pokemon TCG Live. And if your opponent played spread, you'd lose. If your opponent played special energy lock, you'd lose. If your opponent played um there are a lot of things we just kind of lose
Yes.
against that you wouldn't like see all the time, but they'd be pretty bad. So I'd say most decks aren't quite that way, but ultimately having like a more kind of crazy format. I mean, if you're looking for something more tame, you have standard format, right?
Right.
So I think holding a format to the same I mean, there are things that make standard good, but ideally you'd have a format that's good in every way. But let's be honest, like you need some trade offs, or there will be trade offs. But if you look at it, expanded, even if it falls short in some ways, that standard succeeds in, if it like succeeds in the other ways, and that's like I think good for an alternate format because again, these are alternate formats. They're not. Um, having more choices is good, and so you want it to be different. Overall, though, I feel like expand is like a decent format. A lot of other games have other TCGs have formats like expanded that are like out there. I don't know how popular they are. I don't pay attention to other TCGs that much, but ultimately, I feel like this format like it would be good to have around, but it's not like a super exciting format all the time. It's all right though. It's I mean it's good for an alternate format.
Yeah, look, it lets you try ideas, more creative things, which you can't, in standard. You have to have more options to combine, like because you see new cards, especially that come out, and you're like, oh, this would be good, but then you think, oh, this would be good with some older cards. It lets you try it out. I do want to talk about live expanded a little bit too, which is very similar, except that the card pool's smaller. You can't play it's Sun and Moon on, so no black and white or XY cards because they don't have them properly fully implemented into live yet. But in some ways, I actually find the live expanded more enjoyable. Of course, I can't play it full expanded in live, so I don't get much chance to play it, but you lose some of the really hard, strong control cards, which is a plus. And also, you're forced to make up your own deck list more so. You can find full expanded deck lists out there, like this Japanese tournament and such, but you have to make some tweaks to those to play them in live expanded. And it's just a bit more of kind of a rogue scene, I would say, in live. So it lets you kind of try out ideas. It was, you always have a chance in games because partly you just don't know what you're going to play up against. But in some ways, I like the truncated format better. I just wish it was by design, not by default. That's probably the biggest black eye to it.
Yeah. In terms of playing it, do you see people playing like specifically live expand? Do you see people playing good decks most of the time, or
Um,
like decent, not like amazing, but like not standard decks or decks that are just like super bad. Like I mean, do you see people playing like draw three supporters all the time?
I see there's a lot of people that are playing essentially standard decks still.
Mhm.
There's some that are playing full expanded standard decks, and then you see also standard decks with like maybe 3 or 4 expanded cards they want to put in, which doesn't usually get much ups. Which helps it some, but not that much. When people build their own decks, yeah, then you see a lot of draw three supports and stuff, which you will get. I think some of the other like trainer trials, you see more of that. I will say. Yeah, a lot of what I see is people have random ideas and they build them. That's probably what I see probably almost half the time, which is a good thing. Which means
Random like interesting like silly rogue decks or random
yeah,
like literal random cards.
silly rogue decks. They have a
Okay.
thought. They have an idea that
Yeah.
they've put together on their own. That if people were playing the best of expanded decks, those rogue decks wouldn't have much of a chance. But I like to be able to play my own rogue decks too. So that's the good thing about it. But you're also going to run in probably at least 25% of the time to something that's standard or pretty close to standard decks, which makes it less fun. But at least they're not overpowering, so you can usually deal with them as well.
Yeah. I feel like having a format that's like more casual as well is good. Ultimately, you can play standard casually if you want, um,
Yeah.
but that's like not really what people do. I mean, you could do it like very casually with your friends, just with whatever. That's usually you're not going to go back to casual generally if you've started playing like legitimate meta decks, right? I mean, you might do
Right.
some rogue stuff, but it's not like it's not like true casual, right? And I think live expanded is kind of in that state of being casual, which is cool. I think it's a little too casual where you'll see some bad, these like decks that are just like quite bad. Again, I think it's you build everyone's at different skill levels, but um I mean specifically the standard decks, that's like not so exciting.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
then you're not playing an alternate format.
yeah, and
They're not playing an alternate format.
right. Well, the other type of decks I see a fair amount, which I want to mention, is like older decks that have rotated relatively recently. Like say a Mu VMAX deck. Someone like Mu VMAX, they want to play Mu Genesect, so they just take their old deck list. Often it's just an old standard deck list, and they play it, which is fine. I don't have anything wrong with that. I sometimes I will still jump in with like an Arceus and Teleon deck because I enjoy that, and I might tweak it out a little bit. I can't play a Scoop Up Net, unfortunately, so it's actually if it'd be worse than the old standard deck, which is uncommon for things. But you slap a few
Well,
cards
yeah.
in and play something with a feel and dynamic that you enjoy. So I think it's a good thing. I think part of it is also in live the matchmaking should be better. Well, there's not a huge player base. That's probably part of the issue. But also the matchmaking for the casual, I think, might just be strictly random, and that's not as good either, right? You'd like to get kind of players more compatible levels matched up, or decks that are compatible matched up, something to make the experience a little better. That'd be a plus too.
Yeah. But you were talking about older standard decks. I think one thing I don't really know where this kind of lines up, but um, you can people. Some people. What am I saying? Some people enjoy playing older standard formats,
Yes.
which I think is like can be cool. Um, Ultimately, I don't know if that's like a different format. It's still standard. And on top of that, like I think it's cool. It can be fun. I think it's fun to do just a little bit. You can like kind of switch between them, and it can be really cool. Like on PTCG Sim, um, there's a selection of older decks and older formats. So you can play with like the world's decks as well. There are different things, and they can be fun. I don't think they're fun to play all the time, but they like freshen things up. Just rotating between different formats. That's also true of the training trials. We are rotating between different formats. Though I'd say a
Yeah.
lot of those training trials are going to be like those modified standard formats, which aren't really so interesting there.
Yeah, although we'll talk a little bit about those some because some I think some are more different than you're giving credit for. But yeah, because I'm looking at Limitless where it talks about I think this is the Dex page, and it has official formats, it has standard, expanded, and then for the most part it has block formats and such. That's a lot of what it has based on different regulation marks, the card pool. Or like what world's formats were, things like that, different regulation marks. So a lot of it's just different time periods, which like you said, it's not really an alternate format. It's just is an old format, which is fine. But that's what most of these quote alternate formats are in Limitless. But to me that they don't make meet the to me what I would call as an alternate format, just an older format. It's nice having the option you can play with your friends, but it's not really anything all too different.
Yeah. Some of these aren't actually old standard formats. Like like the block formats aren't
Right.
old formats except for Sword and Shield. But yeah, I mean they're pretty close. So for the most part, I think they can be cool though. I'd actually recommend them to people to try out from time to time. If you get a chance to say pick up old World Championships decks, which actually probably like don't do, they're kind of expensive and they're not cards you can play with in like I mean you can't play with the cards anyway, I guess, but because they're not standard, but they're different. They're not regular cards. They aren't playable, but they're also a little cheaper quality as well.
Yeah,
But
for
anyways, yeah,
yeah, if you're not familiar with the world's decks, it's a fun way to kind of get some of these cards or play some of these decks. You can always print proxies too, but the backs of the cards is different. So even if there were official expanded tournaments, these worlds cards are not legal in those. So Although, if you want access to an actual printed card of some of these cards, the world's decks, even though they're expensive, it's still the cheaper way to get some of these very strong cards that are, very expensive to buy singles of in some cases.
Yeah. I know it's true for Tropical Beach. I don't know if it's true for anything else. Um, but yeah, I guess that's a perfect transition to GLC, where GLC are actually able to play these cards as far as I'm aware. I know this was a thing at one point. It doesn't really matter very much, but anyways, GLC is a format that is the other of like the I think realistically the ones that are played the most are expanded GLC. There's also unlimited, I guess, but unlimited like it's just like standard, but like I'd almost call it casual standard. If you played it seriously, it's unplayable. So GLC though is singleton mono type non rule box, and it's in the I say expanded. It's black and white on. In Pokemon TCG Live, it's Sun and Moon on. In Pokemon TCG Live, GLC is not that different than full GLC. I've heard a lot of people complaining about it. I've heard more people complaining about it than expanded, but I think it's because GLC players like to complain. Um, but yeah, GLC in expanded is similar. Or no, what GLC in live is similar. Very similar. There are some card differences, but in terms of like the proportion of decks and like there aren't that many important cards that are missing. But anyways, GLC it's a fan format. It's the first one we're talking about that's in the official alternate what's it Pokemon TCG alternative play handbook.
Yes.
Um, which is a thing. If you didn't know, this exists. It has some alternate formats. For the most part, they're I was gonna say bad. I don't know. They're kind of weird.
Well, I
But
mean, a
yeah.
lot of them are designed for younger kids, right? There's a beginner, intermediate, advanced formats. The beginner, intermediate are for younger kids to play the game. So, which is fine, right? It's the advanced formats. There's GLC, there's team format, there's raid format, and Ditto draft. You know, you ran a Ditto draft event recently, I think. The other ones, team format, raid format. I don't think there's much there worth talking about myself.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll talk about maybe team's funny. I'll mention menu of limitations here. Menu of limitations actually GLC is within menu of limitations. It's like alternate standard or like alternate format. It's like not really a format. It's like any format. It's kind of weird. It's just like different options for like making your own format, kind of. But anyways, pack battle is also like kind of cool. You build a deck from a pack. It is kind of cool. There's like moderate strategy. Anyways, I figured I'd mention that one. That
Yeah.
was kind of fun, where you add like 10 energies to the pack, and then the energies are every type, and there's some stuff you could check it out. But as a format, it's kind of cool. But we'll get to some other related forms to that because we are talking about GLC here.
Yeah.
GLC is like cool. It's definitely an interesting experience. Again, it is a deck format that is a like constructed format, I think is the term, where you like build a deck beforehand, which I mean Pack Battle isn't, and a
Right.
few others aren't, that we're going to be talking about here. But it is singleton, so that's a different feel. It's a little more random. Um, I will say, like having 60, or not necessarily 60, but almost potentially 60 different cards, probably like 50 different cards. Um, it's a lot for a new player. In terms of
Yeah.
like an alternate format, if you're looking for a casual format, I think. I mean, I wouldn't say expanded is really a casual format, but I also wouldn't say GLC is a casual format. I feel like it's some people kind of brand it as a casual format, but it's pretty difficult. Like I'd say it's harder than standard by a bit. It feels kind of casual because it's like single prize, but and it's also like, oh, you can use your older cards, but like for the most part, the older cards you're going to be using are going to be like these crazy trainers, or like crazy abilities on Pokemon. And then the Pokemon you're going to be using are like random cards from standard. Like there's a Dialga from what's this set from? It's in Surging Sparks, which is 160 for 3, which is like super good in GLC. But it's like it's not a very interesting card. So there's a lot of like there's a shocking amount of filler cards that are actually like good in this, which is kind of cool, right? Seeing these cards that are bad in standard be good in GLC, but also these aren't necessarily that exciting, but there are some cool things you can do. We've talked about this a bunch. We're not going to dive into it too much about like the metagame or anything. I'd say a lot of the decks feel kind of similar, but there are definitely cool things you can do in GLC.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things with GLC. First, it was designed to work with Pokemon TCG Online, the older online client, which is right, which is why which had full expanded against friends matches, which was black and white on, so that was the card pool for it. Um, I will agree it is harder for new players, which is something to keep in mind. Most of these alternate formats are going to be harder for new players, right? I mean, standard is what things are built around. You can buy decks pre-constructed and such, so you're going to have to do some work to get a deck list or put together your own deck list, which makes more work. And anything that's singleton is a lot harder because you got a lot more cards to deal with. So it's definitely harder there. I think it's budget.
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
I wanna mention one thing. That there are definitely some of these alternate formats that are more new player friendly. I mean, there's like some of
Yeah,
we were just talking about the formats in the play handbook. Some of these are like I mean multi experience grow and go format. This
yeah,
format is it's like teaching you the game. I think that's what it is. And there's some other ones that are like objectively simpler, but there's also formats that you don't have to build decks for, or you don't really build decks for. Um, which we'll talk about. I mean, like Pack Battle. Right? Pack Battle is a format where you don't build a deck at all. There's a lot less options within the game. You don't need to like know the meta game. So, um, yeah, I mean, I see that's like a simpler format, like a more fun, casual format. That format, like the biggest issue of that format, it literally costs. Well, I guess it doesn't have to, but realistically, it costs money because you need to like get packs, which is like cool. I mean, it's like you can see it as like a side event at like a tournament or something. It is cool there, but it's a little different. We'll talk about pre-release later, which I think is a better version of that idea. But yeah.
yeah. I mean, most of these decks are pre-constructed decks, so that you build, which build the deck before you get there. Pokemon doesn't have a lot of draft and things like that, or pack type things, a little bit, which we may touch on here and there. So part of why it's budget friendly or casual, I guess, is it lets you use, in theory, your random cards you have laying around your house, and you can put together a deck from that because there's no limit. You can use the older cards for it. You have a bunch of one ofs of something, so in theory, anyone, if you're done even a limited amount of collecting, you can put together a GLC deck and then play your friends with it. And if everyone's just kind of at the same level for deck, uh, for card access, then it's okay. But obviously, once it starts to get more serious and people get more competitive about it, then you have to invest in particular cards. Still, generally cheaper cards than like for a standard or full expanded. But you have to then do the work to get the particular cards you need. So, but like it was designed for Pokemon TCG Online. You can do it in live. Well, actually, you can't even do it in live all the time, right? It's one of the trainer trials, the most popular one. But you can only play it if you want to actually play that format periodically, which is kind of this weird situation they have in Pokemon TCG Live. I think GLC is going to become like the third format in live eventually. I think it makes sense. I think people would like it, and I think Pokemon, the direction they're going, they're willing to do that. That's my guess.
Yeah, I will say I'm not actually sure if GLC is cheaper than standard. It's pretty close, and I think it kind of varies from deck to deck. Um, but in terms of like the casual thing, it like does kind of apply to GLC. I mean, again, it's like kind of treated as this, I guess, more casual format by some people, or like framed in that way. And then if you approach it, if everyone approaches it that way, then it does work. I think you could also do like standard that same way, right? You could
Yeah.
have people play standard, and then you could also like get like you don't need to. You could like technically not buy singles, or you'll be able to find the singles at like local shops more likely. I think because they're all coming out now. Also, if you are just playing casually with your friends with just random cards, you've opened from like packs and stuff, you're gonna not have that many final evolutions, which are like the good cards, and then trainers as well. So you're gonna be like
Yeah.
missing a lot of good and interesting cards. Not just like it's not like you'll be playing with these like boring but kind of neat cards, or not boring. You'll be playing with these bad but kind of neat cards. No, you'll be playing with cards that are kind of bad and very boring. So yeah, but overall GLC, like, it's popular. I'd say it's very I was gonna say it's more popular than it is good. I mean, it is fun. There are some really cool things you can do with it. Um, I definitely say GLC. I mean, GLC and Expander, like the two big ones. The people who play there's not that much overlap. So I think most people are either gonna like on an individual case, are gonna say, oh, GLC, that's like clearly more popular than Expander, or Expander, that's clearly more popular than GLC. But I think it is close. Again, it's like it's kind of hard to measure though.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, well, in term compared to the other trainer trials in live, GLC is the most popular of them. I've noticed that because at times it's hard to find matches in these alternate formats in trainer trials. GLC is better, although at times it's harder to find people to play against. But you can run into that same thing with live as well. One thing I think with just live related, I think live expanded versus full expanded, I think they feel very different just because
Yeah.
the power of the cards. But I think GLC full back to black and white versus GLC Sun and Moon on. I think they feel relatively similar. That they're not as different. So I would kind of say that they're the same format to me
Yeah,
as
yeah,
I
I
look
agree.
at it. Which I think you were alluding to that as well.
Yeah, I feel like as I said, some people like complain that they're like super different. They're not. If you think they're super different, I mean, like there are some differences, right? And in some decks
Yeah.
will be hurt a lot. That's like pretty niche. I can't actually think of any deck. I guess water with Octillery is like hurt, but like that's not like the you're not playing an Octillery deck. And then um
There's double
can't
dragon
even think.
energy, right?
Oh yeah,
Is
double dragon energy. That's a big one. And there are some like good trainers that you can't play. I guess if you really like Hex Maniac and Silent Lab, then that's not there. I don't. But that's like a thing. But I'd say like, I mean, not Hex Maniac for expanded because that's banned, but like Silent Lab and most of these things are going to be like a lot bigger deal in expanded. But anyways, so yeah, I feel like between those two formats, which we might, I think at the end of the video or the podcast, we're going to kind of break down what the actual second best one is. But I think it is going to probably be between those two. In terms of popularity, it definitely is. But
yeah.
there are some other cool formats. I think the one we should talk about next is the one that doesn't really exist as far as I'm aware anymore, which is theme deck format.
Yeah.
Where you play with theme decks, which are the like regular theme decks came out. I almost want to say since from base set to I don't know if there was actually base set, but from since we've been playing until
Yeah.
Vivid Voltage. We actually didn't start playing it that much before, like more seriously. But anyways, so Vivid Voltage was the last time we got theme decks. Not sure why that was cut off. But anyways, there are these pre-constructed decks. They are um, but you get to choose which one you want to play. This is in Pokemon TCG Online.
Yeah.
Supposedly, this format was bigger than standard. I've heard like some sources say that. I don't actually know if that's true, but it might have been true. But anyway, so you have this format. There are these decks. It's for the most part, it's like 20 Pokemon, 20 trainers, 20 energy or so.
Yeah.
They're not super good compared to standard. They're pretty bad, like the Pokemon in them, but they're like fun. Specifically near the end, like the last 2 to 3 years of the format of the decks there, you see like more interesting decks like playing Pidgeotto, which is like Drake and I'm trying to think what else. Like Zebstrika, which is like a fun little draw engine.
Yeah.
There's just a bunch of cool cards there. And yeah, I mean for the most part, it was a super fun format, which was casual. And easier to get into than standard. You could compete at the highest level in terms of decks very easily. And there was still interesting strategy. I've heard some people say that there's like not interesting strategy. There is. There's not as much strategy by any means as standard. Or any of these other forms we talked about. However, there is strategy. It's not like everyone's playing it perfectly. There's a shocking amount of things to think about. There's like matchup specific things. And like you can play slower versus faster. Um, in some really interesting ways. It's a very different dynamic than standard, and there's definitely going to be more. I mean, the supporters or the trainers are worse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of energy and there's a lot of like Pokemon that just don't do anything on their own. So, as in their like evolution, like there's a lot of evolution lines that are kind of spread out. So, um, you can dead draw, right? More so than other
Yeah.
formats, but I'd say it's really cool, right?
Yeah, so in Pokemon TCG Online, it went back to what Heart Gold, Soul Silver. That's what the card base went back to. and that's what I think the theme decks went back to. But it
Mhm.
was the more recent ones that they got a little better over time generally. But you had maybe 10 ballpark, say 10 decks that you could choose from. Probably a little more than that, or in one sense to be viable, maybe a little less to be at the real top decks. But that gives you a sense. But that's not a bad set of mix. They were the in-game economy was much tougher in Pokemon TCG Online than live. So it was an important part of just the in-game economy to get a theme deck and win games with it to complete your challenges. So that was part of it. It was very popular, certainly close to standard. I don't know, but it was more popular than expanded, and certainly more popular than Legacy, which we might talk about briefly. But I can't imagine much there. So what I liked about themed was it was kind of more laid back. It was a nice thing at the end of a day. I wanted to play a little Pokemon, but didn't want to have to kind of wanted to relax while I was doing it because you don't have to you can't tweak your deck list. You go in, you go, okay, what deck do I want to play? You know and then when you're playing, you're 60. You don't have to think about it too much because you played all these decks a bunch. You know your opponent's list, they're 60 because you've seen that deck list a bunch, and you kind of know how things can go. Both, they're not optimized decks, so generally the games take a little longer, but it was kind of just a nice, relaxing way to do it. Part of why it ended, well, first, PTCG went away, but themed was going to go away anyway because they had stopped making theme decks. So they are what I guess EX battle decks, right? They were the V battle decks, the EX battle decks, which are essentially the same thing. So they could do something with that. Although I don't know that those decks are would work as well. I think they're a little more inconsistent. Having one V or EX just makes those decks a little weird. Having it all being single prize, I like that with the theme decks. I gotta say.
Yeah, and I believe now they are pretty sure they're made with megas now, which seems even more
Oh
inconsistent.
yeah,
Um, I'm not super familiar with them. If people play them, tell us down below in the comment section on YouTube. What were your thoughts on them? These are different than the League Battle decks. The League Battle decks in some ways have also replaced them. The League Battle decks are a lot better. They
yeah,
made products like this in the past, but they're a lot less common. Now they're making them. I don't know. They're making them pretty commonly, and they're very good. They
yeah,
are a standard, like a good standard deck. I don't know if they're all necessarily top five decks, but they're very good. I mean, the ones I can think of are Gardevoir, Charizard, Dragapult.
yeah,
There's a Mew VMAX one. So they're very good decks. The lists are not very good. They're like decent. Ultimately, if you took one to a tournament, there are definitely some changes you want to make, but they are not bad by any means. And then they are, when you play them, you're playing standard, you're playing legitimate standard, not necessarily a perfectly optimized list or anything like that. But it's pretty good. Like it's not bad by any means. Probably better than an or like on a similar caliber to like an optimized deck of the 20th best deck in the game or something like that, which is not like super amazing, but it's all right. So compared to theme decks, which are like not, you can get like obliterated if you play against a standard deck. But or the like battle decks, the not the league, but the EX or the mega battle decks. But they are fine. I mean, they're good for getting people into standard, but they're
yeah.
bad for theme because they're not theme decks. So, or if you count them as theme decks, if you play them against each other, you're just playing standard, which is cool, but it's not really an alternate format like at all. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it'll come into our final calculations of the best, but themed, if cost wise, is the cheapest of these formats. At least it was. I don't know how easy what the cost of theme decks is these days. So probably the ones they're not as cheap as they had been, but obviously these decks were very cheap to buy. And then probably the standard format, if you discount themed, is probably the cheapest form because of these pretty good decks you can buy for like what 30, $40, get a good deck. These other formats you're going to spend more on it. um, GLC cost wise, it might cost the same as a standard deck, but then you don't need to keep updating the deck with rotation. So long term, it's cheaper than a standard deck. GLC in that sense is when it will come in a little less, but that's a secondary point. But I think something worth keeping in mind too.
Yeah, and that point kind of applies to expanded, but I'm pretty sure the expanded cards are more expensive. I'm not
Yeah,
actually sure because I don't. I mean, I don't really buy cards. I mean, I generally say like proxy decks. I always support proxy decks because it's a way to play the game. Um, you need a printer and sleeves and I guess some cards, which are can be like any cards. So you should be able to get those for free from wherever. But yeah, I mean that's like a way to play different things. I guess it does get a little expensive if you're like proxying like tons and tons of decks, but even in that case, it's gonna be cheaper than actually buying all those cards. So but and then some formats are more open to like proxies in different sense, like different ways. Like obviously in official tournaments, you can't do that. GLC, you can do, as I said, I believe the world stack cards. I think it was implemented just to specifically play Tropical Beach more, which I mean it's still like expensive. The world's deck. This is not the world's deck as in like not the promo because it's a world's promo, but like the actual or sorry the one that was played in the world's deck with the different back. Anyways, so but yeah, I'd say a lot of these are like similar-ish in price. But I think we should talk about a format that is actually played now a decent amount, which is the pre-release format. Pre-release is a pretty cool format where you get it's a 40 card format. Let's see, what was the so Phantasmal Flames is the most recent expansion. One of the previous promos was what, like Serial, which has a previous promo, right? Yeah, so they have these like alternate arts, which is like kind of cool, I guess. But anyways, you get this 40 card deck plus 4 packs, and then you add cards to, or you could like make changes to the deck from the cards from the packs. The decks are decent, or they're not like standard good, but they're okay. I think they've gotten better over time. I'll make one minor complaint that um, because now there's just like one type really. It's like hard to actually find slots to put new cards in the decks. But they're still like it's a really fun format. It is kind of like theme deck format. Everyone I've talked to really enjoys it. It can be a little luck based because you don't choose the deck you're doing. You can make some changes, as I said, but pretty minimal. If you pull like an EX or something, that can be really strong. Um, but for the most part, it's a cool format, kind of like theme. It is expensive, I guess. I mean, it's actually cheaper than a regular, like than getting a standard deck, but you're not replaying it. Um, you also like pay for the event plus the card, so in some sense, like I don't know, the calculating is like kind of weird. It's a different thing, but it is. I say it's a really fun experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, cost wise, you pay for the event, which includes the kit you get. So it's you're it's kind of like instead of going to see a movie, you're playing Pokemon. Is
Yeah.
what I'd say, which is kind of your entertainment money, but you get to have fun for a couple hours, and you walk away with some Pokemon cards as well. Yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's casual. It's a tournament setting, but it's not people aren't all overly serious about it. People are there to have fun. Like people aren't going to drop once they're not going to make top cut. Or whatever it is, right? Which happens at a
Yeah.
regular tournament. So people, because they're just there to have fun. It is different than all the other formats in that it's not a pre-constructed deck. It is a lot more pre-constructed now than it had been because you get a pretty set deck to start with, but then you can tweak it yourself on the fly right at the beginning of the time there. So that's an interesting thing too. It has a deck building on the fly. The biggest negative is the randomness of what you get because there's usually of the four promo cards, there's one of them that's usually better for the pre-release. There's probably often of one of them that's better for standard play. Usually not the same card, and two that are kind of in between. So what you get will determine a lot of how you do. But a very fun experience overall.
Yeah. Also regarding the cost is for the most part it like kind of depends where you are,
Yeah.
but the amount you pay is generally equals to the amount of cards you're getting. Like you'll get your money's worth in cards, and
Yes.
then you could view it as like the tournament's free, or you could kind of view it as like oh, which is I think how you were saying it as in oh I'm paying for this event, but then I'm also getting some extra stuff on the side. But overall, it's something I'd really recommend people try out. It is like decent for new players. I've definitely like when I've been at these events, I've seen people who it's like, oh, this is their first time playing Pokemon. I'd say it's like a mediocre way to get into the game. I wouldn't really recommend it if you've never played the game before and like don't know how to play. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably know, but if you don't, try it out and try out the game. Probably play honestly on Pokemon TCG Live. That's gonna like you can like experience things You don't need to be a veteran player or anything to play in these events. But if you literally don't know the rules and enter a tournament, um, I mean, it's not like, again, it's not super serious, but your opponents will kind of have to help you out, which is like, um, then you're kind of learning from some random person, which like could work out, but not everyone's as good at that as like other people. And anyways,
Yeah,
it's a cool format though. It is a beginner format
yeah, I
for
mean,
format.
just on what you said, the people listening to the podcast aren't they know already how to play. But if you're looking to have get a friend to play Pokemon for the first time, the pre-release isn't the best thing. But you could just even just play a couple games with them beforehand, or just have them play PT live a little bit and know it. But besides pre-release being fun, it is a good first IRL experience, right? IRL
Yeah.
tournament experience because it's very casual and people are willing to help out and all that. So and it's low pressure, low stress. So it's good for that first IRL tournament experience for sure.
Yeah. It's also a way to like kind of interact with a local game store as well.
Yeah.
It's a type of event that you'll see pretty commonly at local game stores. That's like structured so you'll be able to find people there to play with, and you can just like talk about other Pokemon stuff like his standard deck ideas and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah, like this is a cool format. It's not a format like is always happening, right? I mean, theoretically, I think you can buy the build and battle kits like whenever. Um,
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. They're obviously meant to be at they are an early way to get the cards from the set, which is kind of cool. And that's when you're going to be doing that like the 2 weeks or so before the set comes out. But yeah, I mean they are legitimately good format. Or it is legitimately good format. But what format do you want to talk about next?
I mean, it gets tricky at this point. I mean, are there any other trainer trials you want to talk about, or not really?
I don't remember the other trainer trials. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, like we have the mega. Well, like a lot of the trainer trials are not so good, right? Like we've got the Mega Singleton Showdown, which is, they've done it each time with the megas out here, which is what it's a Singleton deck, and you have to have one Mega Pokemon in it, which is just not a good format, I would say, right? So that's not going to be the best alternate format. I think that's
Yeah.
about all we need to say on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like not horrible. It's kind
No.
of going for. I guess we'll mention mentioned this a few times before. There's Magic the Gathering's Commander format, which is the most popular alternate format of any TCG. That format is, in some ways, both a GLC and the Mega format, what's it called? Mega Singleton Showdown. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
those are kind of based off of it, which is like, I guess, worth mentioning. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's all right, I guess. But anyways, we've talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the format that is very good that we haven't talked about, there's a few different variations. I guess I'll talk about the Ditto draft format first, but I'll just talk about draft in general or cube draft. Um, in other games, I think there's like pack drafts, which are more common. I think the Ditto draft is intended to be done as a pack draft, with like actual packs. Oh, this is loading kind of slowly. So a draft, if you're not familiar with how it works, you get packs or like fake packs, which are something that allow you like open them up and then you take a card from them. You don't take all the cards from it, and then you pass the rest of the cards to the person next to you. And each you're going to be in a group of people doing this. Here it says it's 2 to 4. I feel like it would be bad with two, but anyways, in like full cube drafts. It's generally done with 8, but it could be done with really any number. Though if it's done with 2, you just kind of change it. But anyways, it's something that can be done or it should be done in a group. And you take a card from your pack, you pass the rest to the next person. Each person's doing this at the same time, so you'll receive a pack of 9 cards if the first one was 10, with the best card taken out. And you keep doing this. You do this until you've gotten all the cards of the pack. You do it for a handful of packs. Then you create a deck out of this. Sometimes there's alternate deck building rules to allow you to evolve easier, because like opening random cards from random packs is going to be like really difficult to evolve. So there's a thing called mutant evolution where you evolve with the same type, and there's ditto evolution, which is like a different thing. It's kind of complicated. It's actually not complicated, but it's often confused. Anyways, yeah, this is it. But the idea is that you're creating your deck. Deck building is a big part of it. It's also kind of a group thing. We're gonna talk about some like group formats. I mean, pre-release is a format where it is kind of about community. Um, in some sense, GLC is about that as well. There is like a GLC community, but that's more different. That's like a bigger thing in terms of like small local community with a group of people. I think draft is a cool format for that, but you're not like playing together. I mean, you're playing together like 1v1s in like a Swiss or round robin style format, which is fun. But the drafting experience, it's really fun. I say I'm kind of rambling on a little bit here, but it's a really good format. There's two issues though. The one is it's really long. The draft takes I'd say maybe an hour, but it kind of depends. And then the playing, I mean, you're playing a bunch of games, right? You really need to do like a whole tournament versus pre-release. Like you could play pre-release against your friend. Obviously, standard, expanded, GLC, any of these formats, you could just play against someone, play a game.
Yeah.
Draft, you can't really just do one game. And then on top of that, it's also you also need a bunch of people, and you need a bunch of people with a bunch of time, and you also need the actual draft. If you're doing cube, they can be expensive. If you look online at cubes, they usually are very expensive. That being said, you can just build them, and generally people build them with the cards that they have, so they're actually not expensive. They're kind of like free because you can play with older cards you have, and it's just really fun. Um, it is a time commitment to build, in addition to being a time commitment to play. But it is legitimately very, very fun for you to try out. Again, it just is a commitment for a bunch of reasons there.
Yeah, look, I haven't done the Ditto draft at all, but I like drafting. It's a fun thing. It's very different from the pre-constructed formats. The cube drafts are very enjoyable. They are a big commitment, like you said. First, you have to build the cube. Someone has to build the cube, right? Which is a lot of time. And you usually build the cube and refine it over time to get it to be more balanced. You don't have to spend a lot of money on the cards, like you said, as long as you have a decent card collection. You just use the cards you have, and but just try to make it so it's balanced. So it's not like you get this one card or a couple cards and you're automatically going to win. You don't want to have that. So it's very social. You sit down, you do the draft, you do some talking, and then you play the games. It does take a lot of time. So you need time beforehand to build the cube. You need, like you said, time for the drafting, time for the playing, and you need this group of friends that all you want to play Pokemon and have the time to do it, which that can be difficult as well, right? To get like together with like 8 people is pretty common that do it, and you kind of need to take all day. Like you kind of play on a Saturday, you take most of the day to do it, which is an enjoyable thing, but it's not as easy to do, right? It's less accessible than the other formats. That's probably the big downside to it. I see.
Yeah. There are also I will say every time I've done this, I've done this type of event in some different forms a bunch of times, and I've always really enjoyed it. There's one time I had a horrendous headache, and I still really enjoyed it. Like it's an awesome format, but again, it's just such a commitment. But if you hear people talk about it, they'll generally say it's really good. I played it with people who are new. It's not like there's like the issues that we kind of talk about with like pre-release, where if you're like brand new, it's not gonna be so good. But as long as you like enjoy the game, it's good. It's just an awesome way to play the game, and it has deck building, right? It has deck
Yeah.
building built into the thing, which is only true of I guess pre-release of the forms we talked about, but it's not like super true with pre-release. I think it's become less true over time
Yeah.
to make it more new player friendly and more balanced, honestly. Because when it was heavily based on deck building, it was also more heavily based on what you pulled in your packs. But yeah, I mean, drafting is a really cool format that I'd recommend people try out. I mean, I mean, you can do them online. I've done some online. If people are interested, leave it down below in the comment section on like my Discord server. But it is a really cool format. But do you have any other formats you want to touch on before we kind of wrap this up and figure out what the definitive second best format is?
I mean, I think like a popper type format, common and uncommon only, is interesting, but it's limited to how much it gets done and where you can do it. So these other formats may have some pluses to them, but I think they're all pretty niche, right? So I don't know that there's
Um,
anything else that has enough player base to make it worthwhile. Anything you want to talk about?
yeah, I have a couple more. Or
Good.
I don't know. I have these are the other two formats are wait, what is it called, the advanced formats
Okay.
in the Pokemon TCG, which are the team format and the raid format. I've never actually played the raid format. I've heard of it. I think there's actually two different variations. I'm not really sure. The team I believe is 2v2. I think it's actually super complicated, or like kind of complicated, but anyways, this isn't saying that these actual formats are like the good formats, but the idea of like an actual multiplayer format as in more than two people is interesting because all the formats we talked about have been two people. Some have social elements. the draft is more than two people, presumably, but the playing is not. The playing is going
Right.
to be. I mean, it's like you're a bunch of people are playing at the same time. But you're playing as one person. So multiplayer format is a cool idea. I don't know if there's been a particularly great implementation of it. As far as I'm aware, the 2v2 format is. I was gonna say bad. I don't know. I've never heard of anyone actually playing it. Again, if you play like any of these weird, wacky formats, tell us down below in the comment section if there's any we missed. But I think the idea of like a more than two player format is really interesting. It's just not really been done yet. I've heard some like again, I mentioned Commander in Magic, and been some tries at it in the TCG. I don't think they've worked super well. Oh, I will also mention that some people play on. There's ways to play these weird formats. Obviously, you can play them in person, but you can't always do that, right? You're looking for people to play with. You can't always find them super easily in person. But online, you can find them easier. But then, how do you play? There's two ways. There's simulators. For example, Tabletop Simulator. That's not free. Once I was like, yeah, I want to play Tabletop Simulator people, and they're like, yeah, and then everyone quit because they realized it wasn't free, even though I said it wasn't free. Anyways, um, so Tabletop Simulator is a way. It's like kind of bad for Pokemon, and it's clunky. It can cause motion sickness. There's a bunch of issues, but yeah, anyways, Tabletop Simulator, it works. I've done some stuff on it, and there's other simulators as well. PTCG Sim is one I'd really recommend for two-player formats. Tabletop Simulator can be done with more than two people. There's also webcam. I know some people have done webcam. I think webcam, from what I've seen, is pretty bad. I mean, you can see webcam on like official tournaments, and it's cool. That's a little different. You're not using webcam to play. You're using webcam, or you like a streaming setup to broadcast it at like regionals or whatever, which is like kind of cool. But that's like literally professional. So just random people, it's really rough as far as I'm aware from what I've seen. And it's like, oh, you need to be like strict if you're doing a tournament so people don't cheat. It's just a big mess. I've heard some people playing it, but I mean, I ran a tournament over the summer, and someone was like, "Yeah, we should do webcam," and they were like, "Okay, well, if both people have a webcam, you can do webcam." As far as I'm aware, there was only one person with a webcam, so or like a, I'm saying webcam. That's not like that's what people say, not like a webcam just from like your laptop. I don't actually know how people do it, but anyways, you need like a setup. It's a big mess. So that is a thing, and I'd say it's bad. Long story short.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Commander some, which is multiplayer in Magic the Gathering, right? There's U150 that's kind of some people say is the Commander for Pokemon, but which is 100 card, it's singleton, just like Commander, but it's still a two-player game U150. So I don't think it really meets that definition there. Probably it is like the team format maybe, and then I guess the team formats that's the only one. Well, and the raid battles they allow multiple players to play together, so they're the closest thing that allow groups of people to play together simultaneously. Cubes, like you said, you have the drafting, you have the interaction between things, but when you're playing the game, it's still one versus one.
Yeah. Oh, there's one format I don't think we talked about, which is Legacy. Because I
Oh
was
yeah,
thinking U150. It's a format that is bad as far as I'm aware, but people like talk about it. I think it's like because someone talked about it and then like everyone else like copied it. Anyway, so as far as I'm aware, I've never like I don't think I've ever met anyone who's actually played it. I think I met one person once who played it. But anyway, so it's like not common. It's clunky. Legacy also kind of like that. Legacy is like an old standard kind of. So I guess we've kind of talked about it. But it's not actually old standard. It's a little bigger than that.
yeah.
Um, when we played in Pokemon TCG online, it was really bad for a variety of different reasons. Um, as far as I'm aware, it was better at one point, but it's like all that like bad stuff about expanded in terms of like all this crazy control stuff. Control is like actually broken, or enough like broken, but like very very good. I think it was by far the best deck in the format. People just didn't play it because they don't play the format, but like if you're like a random casual player, probably not gonna be playing control. But anyways, yeah, Legacy is like it's older. Heart Gold, Soul Silver to the end of the Black and White era, which is like fine. There's some like weird, confusing interactions that like they're not like horrendously confusing, but they're a little confusing. And yeah, I mean, long story short, it's kind of bad.
Yeah, you start to have like pokey powers, which are essentially abilities, but they're not abilities. So it changes things. Yeah, when we started doing Pokemon TCG Online, they changed the games. They weren't so they took out legacy tournaments, so you couldn't get tradable cards because you couldn't craft cards. You had to trade with people, so there weren't you couldn't. It was almost the good legacy only cards were like crazy, crazy expensive. You essentially couldn't get them. So building legacy decks was pretty awkward. And honestly, people didn't play it. For the most part, you'd go in, you wouldn't find someone, or also there are a bunch of bots in the game too. I know people talk about bots in live, and I'm not sure how much of that's legit, but there were people would do bots in Pokemon TCG online in Legacy because basically no one played, so the bots going up against bots, knowing that one of the two bots would win a game. So, but not a good dynamic there.
Yeah, and that was kind of due to the trading. Which, by the way, I haven't heard many complaints about trading in live or not trading not being live in a while.
Yeah.
But it's good that trading's not live, right? Or I don't know, it's the economy in live is a lot better than the economy in PTCG out. But anyways, I think now we're going to decide between what the best of these alternate formats is. And I think obviously there's expanded, which is popular. There's GLC, which is also popular. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, draft is really fun. I'm not gonna lie, I really like draft, but it's not for. I was gonna say it's not for everyone. I mean, there was just the big commitment there. It's very different.
Ye-
So,
All
what,
right.
what
So
would you say?
well, first, I think there's four formats that are good. Cube drafts are really good. That's not going to win because they're complicated. It's a big investment, but they're really good. Theme format was really, I enjoyed that a lot, and that would be definitely for consideration to be the overall winner if we still were in the PTCGO days and could do it.
Yeah,
It played a lot and it was very enjoyable. I would like to see something like that come back. I don't know what that it will because I don't know what the answer is. So it leaves us with GLC and expanded.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
sorry. I'll chuck in pre-release as well. Pre-release isn't
oh
gonna win
yeah,
either because it's not around all the time. But I think it succeeds. And themed isn't really in the running because it like doesn't exist anymore. But yeah,
yeah.
uh,
Pre-release is very enjoyable. So if you haven't done that, do it. You get a chance to do it multiple times a year. So not a problem there. So it's really down to GLC and live. I mean GLC and expanded. I'm probably gonna say for me, I'm going to say expanded because I'm mostly an online player and I can only do GLC sporadically, which then makes it, as someone that doesn't do it a lot, just brings it down for me. So I'm going to say expanded for the best format. But if GLC was in live all the time, honestly, I probably might. I think live GLC would jump to the top.
yeah. I think I'll say GLC honestly. Like I don't know. Some people think I'm a bit of a GLC hater. I like GLC. I don't play it that much. I mean, I don't play expanded that much. People want to play standard. So, I think I mean it's a format where it's a bit more defined as to what it is. Experience mostly in Japan, and we're not in Japan. I think if I lived in Japan, I definitely say expanded. But I mean, I think the format as a whole, expanded, is kind of meh. I think GLC has some really fun dynamics to it. Um, Building in Singleton is legitimately fun. It allows you to play with kind of weird cards in a way you can't really. I mean, you can do an expanded, but for the most part, your deck's going to be a little more similar in terms of build to standard. So I feel like you can do some really fun things in a GLC there, um, where you can do these like silly, not necessarily casual deck builds, but some really if you toss in like a silly evolution line, it's not going to make your deck bad. It'll make it a little worse. But versus if you have your whole deck's built around something silly, it's bad. So I feel like GOC enables some really fun things. I like deck building. I think GLC is more of a deck builder's format, especially like kind of deck building ideas, not necessarily refined deck building, which isn't necessarily like a good thing, but that's what I like. So I feel like it's close. Ultimately, I think it was expanded, and I think we're transitioning into it being GLC. Like expanded is at an all-time low, or maybe not all-time low, and then GLC is I don't know if at an all-time high, but like at that point. So I'd say we're in that transition period, where it's interesting to see where GLC is going to be in say 5 years from now. I think if it's still doing well, then it's going to definitively have surpassed expanded. But at this point, I'd say it's very close.
I think that that's a good summary. So we're split. Your 10 types goes for GLC, common fossil goes for expanded, and right now we're kind of at a point where GLC is probably surpassing expanded, both for uh, IRL, because even as in terms of side events, I think at official tournaments, I think GLC is a bigger thing than expanded internationally. Um, and I think it's getting on the online client a bigger presence there. So well, be interested to see what the transition is going forward. But yeah, for now, expanded has the advantage to me. But I may shift, and let us know in the comments below what your favorite format is, whether it's GLC or expanded or something else, because there are other formats we didn't get into as well. So if you think something else, deserves a shout out, definitely put that in the comments below.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed the episode here today. Make sure you check us out on YouTube, on the 10 Types channel and the Uncommon Fossil channel. You can find some content there. And you can also check us out on podcasting platforms if you want to listen to us in a different manner. Keep in mind, though, if you do have questions, make sure you leave them down below in the YouTube comment section so we can see that there. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff on YouTube. But we hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next episode.
Take care.